So today's an exciting day. It's the 25th of November, and we are demonstrating our solution for the last module. We're going to be using special features within the VirtualBox Manager for custom solutions. We will customize hardware so we can share files between virtual machines. We'll create an extra hard disk. That's been demonstrated previously, but it's also the first task of our solution. And then we'll also adjust network interface options for improved network security and reliability. And we will also use snapshots in order to be able to roll back to previous system states and demonstrate how that works. In order to perform the solution, you have to have Debian, the new dynamic allocation virtual machine, running on your system. And the very first task that we're going to take is actually the last topic, snapshots, because we want to create a first system state that we use to roll back to. And we're going to go ahead and do that now. So actually, I'm going to pull up the Debian screen, and after you log into your Debian system, you should see the option here under Machine for Take a Snapshot. So once again, I've logged into my Debian machine. It's running, and that's the only virtual machine that's running. And I'm going to take a snapshot, and I'm going to name the snapshot Original. And we're going to provide a snapshot description that says, this is the original system state after installation, but before custom changes and software is installed. I'm going to say OK, and it's going to take a snapshot. Now, in order to know whether or not this has actually happened, the way that we access snapshots, it's counterintuitive, because if you go to Machine and you select Take a Snapshot, it's going to open up the Take a Snapshot option, but it's not going to access the previous snapshot. If you go to File Preferences and look in there, or File Manager, you're not going to see it. If you go here to the Machine menu, there's nothing here that shows. The actual way to get into the snapshot is to select this option inside VirtualBox Manager and choose Snapshots. And what you see is that a snapshot was taken on this day, and this is the image that we want you to take a screenshot of. So actually this one right here. So if you would, I'm going to go ahead and hit the print screen key after I select. It's going to be a little tricky here. So I'm going to show my VirtualBox Manager after I selected the snapshot option. If I select Original, you see I have the option to delete it or to check Properties. So that's going to show the name and then the description and then information. It'll show how much space it's taking up. Actually, it just shows system information. So we want to take a full screen snapshot like this, showing the VirtualBox running with this in the background, with original showing. So once you have your screen arranged, I want you to click on your desktop and then hit print screen, and then you can take your snapshot. I want you to save this in a folder for your solution as a JPEG. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and create a solution. I'll call this screen images. I'm going to paste each one of these into a Word document for my submission. And I'm just going to call this one original. So that's my first screenshot. Any questions at this point?
No, I'm just following along.
Okay. So I'll minimize this screen. And if I go into VirtualBox with Virtual Media Manager, I want to create a new disk. So we're going to use specialized hardware features to create some media, disk media, that we can connect to my Debian. And then we're going to store some information on it. And then we're going to detach it or release it, and then open it up in our standard server. And at that point, right before we release the thing, we're going to take a second snapshot. And that's going to give us a chance to see how snapshots work. So in any case, once again, we're going to go to the File menu and then to Virtual Media Manager. And we're going to create a new hard disk. We'll accept VDI because we want to use the same VirtualBox disk image format that both of the virtual machines are using. Each of you should have a standard Server 2019 machine and your Debian. We're going to select Next. We're going to make it a fixed size. We're going to make it 2 GB large. We'll create this, but instead of saying new virtual disk, we're going to call this transfer. So we want to use this as a transfer disk. And we want to be able to attach it, release it and attach it to different machines so we can load it up with stuff and then connect it. So I'm going to go ahead, and you'll notice that I'm creating the VHD in the VHD directory that I have next to my VM directory in my temp folder. As long as you know where your own directory is and you can find it afterwards, you're fine accepting the default location. As long as it's not OneDrive, as long as it's not in the cloud. We're going to create this. And as it is right now, it's actually not going to it's not going to work very well because transfer is not initialized or formatted. But we're going to go ahead and connect it first to the server, and then we're going to go ahead and bring it up in the server screen and initialize it and partition it and format it. And we'll use a file system format that speaks a universal language that Linux can use and Windows can use and Macs can use. It's called FAT32. And so that's where we're going to go from here. So we will close this machine, and you'll notice that our server is off. And I'm going to change from my snapshot view to my details view. And at this point, I'm going to go into settings and to storage on my server. I'm going to, hang on just a second, I have to pause. So the next step after I've created the VDI disk is to go ahead and connect it, except that with a SATA controller, that's an IDE styled controller, except that it's serial. So it's an improvement over the older IDE hard disk controller. And that's limited to connection of 2 devices. We need to add another controller to our system. So that's one thing that we want to do. We don't want to add a hard disk or an optical drive to the same SATA controller because, well, it says it has a 4-port count. So we may be able to connect it, we may not be able to connect it, but generally speaking, it's a better idea to add a new storage controller separately, especially when we're anticipating connecting and disconnecting media. We want to be able to do that separately and isolated from the operating system volume that runs the virtual machine, the C drive that contains Windows. So we're going to add an optical. We'll add a new controller and we'll select the option for a SAS. Well, let's choose default IDE. So we're going to connect a default IDE controller along with the SATA controller, and now we'll add a hard disk. And you'll notice that transfer VDI is listed inside the medium. So we're going to choose this, and now we see transfer VDI connected to our server standard system. So we're going to say OK, and then we're going to power on our server. And one thing we'll notice when server comes up is that it won't really know what or where the disk is, even though it's connected. And oh, it says no bootable medium found, system halted. So let's close this window and power off the machine and go back into settings and go into storage. And it looks as though the IDE controller is now the boot controller. So I'm not so sure that's good, even though it was listed lower after it's configured. I think it's trying to boot from this. So what we'll do is remove this, and I'll remove the IDE controller, and I'll try to add the disk to the SATA. The SATA controller may have a second interface, which allows for the connection of 2 more hard drives. So we're going to assume that that port count is going to allow us to do that. Just be aware that, yes.
Mine says port count 2.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you increase it to 4? Do you have a,
Yeah, I just saw that.
can you increase it to 4? So that's a great point that Raheem just brought up. If yours happens to say port count 2, you can increase it to port count 4.
Yeah, it's at 4 now.
And then go ahead and add a disk and then select transfer and then choose. And then let's click OK. Now we'll start our server again. And hopefully the hard disk will behave because it knows that it's not a bootable disk. And the operating system disk will start up. But once we get on screen, you'll see that server doesn't know that the disk is there yet. Technically speaking, it's attached, but it's not prepared for use. We have to initialize the disk, then we have to partition it, and then we have to format it. We're gonna skip the disk checking and just load this. Whenever you have hard disk changes, that may come up. You can skip the disk check. So we'll go ahead and log in. And as soon as we open up File Explorer, you will see that this system, I'm just going to cancel this. This system basically just shows one hard disk. It shows the original hard disk and doesn't show other hard disks. So that's one thing we need to make sure we take care of. If I open up Control Panel, and then open up Administrative Tools, I can open up the MMC console for computer management. And this will open up the Microsoft Management Console that includes disk management. And at this point, we'll see the 2 GB unknown disk that's been attached. It's going to ask if I want to use an older master boot record or the newer GUID partition table, which allows for much larger hard disks. This is a relatively small hard disk. We'll just accept the default value, and you'll notice this is disk 1. Disk 0 is the C drive that's already in place. So we're going to go ahead and select OK. And now it's initialized, meaning it's online. But it still needs to be formatted for use. And in order to do that, we have to partition. So we're going to right-click it, and to partition it, we'll use our right mouse button to select the new simple volume and accept next, and we'll allow the drive letter to be drive letter E because the CD-ROM drive, the removable disk drive, is drive letter D. But instead of using NTFS, Linux may or may not speak that language, so we're going to select FAT32, and we're going to call the volume label transfer because that's what we know the actual virtual disk is called, which would be like a physical disk. And when we create the disk drive, the usable letter to transfer data, we want to make sure that if it shows up elsewhere in a file system, it has the same name. And we're not going to perform a quick format, we're going to perform a full format. So we'll finish, and that should not take very long at all. If we open this up and have a look, once it starts running, this should format relatively quickly because it's a server. And you'll see that 100% of this is free. Transfer disk is 2 gigs basically, except for a small amount of data that's used for the file system, and nothing's in there. So now that I look inside my File Explorer, I should see transfer E. So at this point, what I'd like to do, now that it's ready for use, I'd like to go ahead and I can just put something in here that I call server data.
So Dr. Kentop, you can enable this this empty drive on multiple virtual machines, or just between 2?
That's a great question. So it's not an NT drive because we did not format it NTFS, but we can use this data drive on other virtual machines because it was formatted using FAT32. So I'm going to just type in something here that says first file on disk, right? And at this point, I want another screenshot. So I'm going to basically show this screen with transfer drive letter E and this notepad file showing. It shows that my server is running and my Debian is running. I'm going to go ahead and select the desktop. Just click out here on the desktop so that when I take the screenshot, it's not going to try to take a screenshot of this. And I'll go ahead and capture that screenshot, and I'll save it as a JPEG that I call new disk. On server. New disk on server. And I'll tell you what, why don't we go ahead and put, just so we can keep these screenshots in order, I'm going to go ahead and click on this and say 1 dash, and then I'll click down here again and say 2 dash. Oop. All right. So that's my second screenshot. Any questions?
And so far.
I could try to eject this. I'm going to save this file. And but I don't think it's not a good practice to have this stuff. I don't see an eject option. That's because it's connected to a running server. I could try to open up Disk Manager again, and but it's still running. It's always a good idea when you're connecting and disconnecting disks to power on and power off your virtual machines and then make the changes in the settings. So I'm going to go ahead and close this screen and power off my server. And I'll go ahead and accept planned and then hit continue. And as soon as that's finished shutting down, I'm going to go into my VirtualBox Manager, into the Virtual Media Manager, and I'm going to find my Debian, not my Debian, my transfer disk, and I'm going to release it because I want to release that from the machine it's connected to now, the server machine. So it says, are you sure you want to release this? This will detach it. I'm going to say release. And that means now it will be back and available to connect to my Debian. I'm not going to be able to connect a disk while it's running. Not likely. All of that's grayed out, you see. So I'm going to open up my Debian. It's another reason why it's just a good idea to power everything off. Some systems have plug and play features where you can just connect or disconnect at will, but I'm going to go ahead and shut this down. And now that it's off, I can connect. So I'm going to go to storage, and I'm going to connect it to the SATA controller. I'll connect transfer to this one. So I click add a disk, select transfer, choose, and now it's connected to the SATA controller on my Debian machine. I'm going to go ahead and power on my Debian machine.
Okay, so you have to manually add the drive to both the virtual machines?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and then they can both access it. Okay.
Yes, they can both access it, but not at the same time. If you're going to access a disk at the same time, provided you have a controlled network, you have a reliable and secure network, you can always share a disk on a server and then access it across the network, and different clients can connect to it at that point.
Okay.
So I come into my Debian machine, And I should notice something different. There's a transfer disk right here. It says not mounted yet. So if I right-click on it and mount it, that means I'm finishing the connection process inside the operating system. In Linux, oftentimes you can connect a disk, but that doesn't mean that it's accessible unless it's mounted. So I'm going to mount this, and I have to give a password for root. And as long as I remembered my password properly, now it's accessible. I'm going to open this up, and I see serverdata.txt. And I'm going to say, let's create a document, and we'll make it an empty file. We'll call it debian.txt. I'll open it with another application, a text notepad kind of application. It's not a Word document, so I don't want to use a word processor to do this, but I want to use a text editor. So where's my text editor? All right, let's see what happens. I'll open it in Office, LibreOffice, and I'm just going to keep it a text file. I'll type, this was created in the Debian machine, Debian VM. I'll go ahead and click Save. I'll use the text format. I'll close it, and I'll close it. And here's something I want to check on. So inside my virtual machine folder, under Debian, you'll see a snapshot directory with the original in there. It's 392 megabytes. Yours might be a little different, but it's about 392 megabytes, 393 megabytes large. And that's the snapshot size that was created when I took the original snapshot in its original form. But since then, I've created a new disk, transfer disk. And what I want to do is take a new snapshot. And this time, when I take the new snapshot, if transfer is a part of the virtual machine image, it may only add the amount of data that's stored on the disk, or it may add the 2 gigabytes because it's a 2 gigabyte attachment. But the one way to find out is to go ahead and take the snapshot. So I'm going to take a snapshot, and this one I'm going to call transfer. And the snapshot description will be the snapshot was taken after a new disk was prepared on the Windows server released and then connected to Debian. Okay? So what we're doing here is documenting the changes that we've made to the virtual machine, and then that way when we're looking at snapshots, we have a little more than just a one-word description. This is considered a best practice. It's called self-description, and techs of all flavors and sizes should practice self-description so that when you're going back to do some troubleshooting, you have additional information. So we're going to create a snapshot. It's going to be saving that machine state. And now we have our disk connected. So if we look at our Debian in VirtualBox Manager now, at our snapshots option, you see we have let's go ahead. You see we have the original and then we have the transfer. So in a sense, the original is the parent snapshot and the transfer is like the child snapshot. So if we need to roll back, we can roll back to transfer or we can roll back to original. If we roll back to original, what do you think happens to transfer?
Does it get deleted or does it stay?
Well, if we roll back to original and we run Debian, we'll find the running virtual machine in its original state. If we delete transfer and roll back to original, then we lose the changes completely. But one of the beauties of taking snapshots is that you can save different system states and roll forward or back in time. So as long as I don't delete this, I have the ability to roll back or forward to different system states, depending on the purpose. This makes testing new hardware and software extremely flexible and powerful because I can make changes and I can troubleshoot and I can roll back and forward depending on what I need. Of course, there's a lot of overhead though. What do we mean by overhead? You remember that we had a snapshot previously and the snapshot was 393 megabytes large. Inside our Debian, I don't know why this is still here, I deleted that. Inside our Debian folder. If I look at snapshot now, it's 782 megabytes large. So it hasn't jumped by 2 gigabytes. It hasn't included the empty disk space that's attached, but it has included the configuration change which connected the transfer VDI virtual hard disk to the SATA controller, right? So that's the trick, is that depending on the changes that you make, snapshots can grow very fast. So even though I have a 1 kilobyte text file on that disk, this isn't 1 kilobyte larger than 383. And that's because the configuration changes for the disk setup are also bundled into that record. Are there any questions so far?
No, sir.
Okay. So at this point, what we're going to do is go ahead and make one other change to our Debian. So right now, we have a server, and the server's state for the network is actually NAT network. And you don't see this option on your system because unless you created the NAT network in another screen, it's not going to present. So when you're performing this solution, an intermediate step you need to take is that you go to Preferences, and then you go to Network, and you add, and this is in VirtualBox Manager now. You're going to go to VirtualBox Preferences, and then you're going to add a NAT network adapter. When you click that, it's going to create one with the name NAT network. And let's see if it, okay, so it just added another one. I'm going to delete that second one. You'll notice I can go into the properties here, and you'll notice that the NAT network adapter is going to allow the same internet address on the server and on Debian. So if they want to share information, they can share information. So this is another way to reconfigure the network to be more secure or more reliable or more flexible. I can enter the supports IPv6 if I have IPv6 devices, but I want you to do this on your machine before you change the Debian setting. You need to create the NAT network adapter. And then once it's there, I want you to go into your Debian. And I don't want you to change yet, but I want you to verify that your settings for network are still configured to NAT. I do want you to go to the server, and I want you to, if you haven't changed it after you created the NAT network adapter, I want you to change your server interface attachment to NAT network. So server should be on NAT network, and Debian should be on NAT. And what we're going to do is go ahead and pull this up and open a terminal prompt. And we're going to, all we're going to do is type in a command called ifconfig. And yeah, so as I'm logged in now, it's not going to let me do that. I'm going to sign off and sign in with root. So I'll log out. And then I'll sign in with root. And as I sign in to root, I should still see, I'll select use default configuration if it's coming up for the first time. I should still see transfer because it's mounted. So I should still see my login. And if I click on this and I type in ifconfig, oh, doesn't have that command. I need to be able to figure out what my IP address is in Debian. Let's see if I can determine what it is here for settings. Might be something very simple. So I'm going to open up a Firefox screen within my Debian machine. And I'm going to go to Google. And I'm going to type in Debian show IP address command. So normally in most Linux systems, when you're doing this, you have to use ifconfig. And here it says you can use the host name with the -L option. -I option. It's a lowercase I. So I'm going to hit the up arrow key. It's not L, it's lowercase I. So there's my IP address. All IP addresses, uppercase I. Let's show all of that. There we go. So I'm going to use uppercase I. My address is 10.0.2.15. And on my server, if I start it now, what we want to do is take a look at what kind of address we have on the server. So we're going to use the assignment right now. It's natted, but we're going to change the attached to NAT network in just a moment, so you can see what the effect is and how this change. So when we took the snapshot for transfer, the setting was on NAT. We're going to take another snapshot to after we make this change, and we're sure that it can talk with the server can talk with the Debian. We're going to take a third snapshot, and then we're going to roll back to the previous snapshot. And you'll see the network won't be able to talk anymore. And the configuration of the system will be different too. It'll revert back. So right now, if I check in and see what IP address I have, on my server machine, it should be pulling the DHCP address range that's specified, which should be a 10.0.3. It's on a different network than the Debian machine. I should be able to verify that shortly. So I'm going to minimize this for a second. And I have my Debian machine sitting on 10.0.2.15. And if I open a command prompt and I type in ipconfig here, you see I'm sitting on 10.0.3.4. So what I want to do is try to ping 10.0.2.15. Because I want to see if this server can talk to my Debian. And then I'm going to try to do the same from the Debian to the server. And you see there's a problem. It times out. I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to ping 10.0.3.4. And you see there's a problem. The two virtual machines, even though they're on the same host, even though they're using the same host network adapter, are configured so that they're on two separate networks. And we can't get a result. It should return with something like unreachable here in just a minute. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and press Control C because I'd like to stop that. But basically, you'll see that there was 0 received, 100% packet loss. So there's, even though it's sitting on the same machine, it's not able to find this. So I'm going to make a change now. I'm going to go to my machine, and I'm going to go to Settings and go to Network. And provided I set up the NAT network interface, I should be able to select NAT network. I'm going to click OK. That's going to make a live change. So some changes you can make live. Hard disks are not one of those, but a network connection you can make live. And now that that's happened, I should be able to see what my host, my new IP address is. And now you see I'm sitting on 10.0.3.6. So that change allowed me to put this NAT network card on the same network with this NAT network card. So I should be able to ping this address now. Let's see what happens. 10.0.3.4. Aha, success. Let's see if the other side works. I'm going to try to ping 3.6. Yes, success. And what am I going to do? Well, at this point, I'm going to take a third screenshot. And this one's going to be a little trickier because what I want you to do is I want you to show both of these on screen with a successful ping back and forth. And then we're going to go ahead and take a snapshot. And this time we're going to call the snapshot NAT network. And I'm going to say the snapshot was made after network device settings on Debian were changed from NAT to NAT network. So now I have a third snapshot. If I go to my device controller, if I go to my VirtualBox Manager and I click on this to see snapshots, you see I have original, you see I have transfer, and you see I have NAT network. And in just a moment, you'll see the taken fill in. So only takes a few seconds. So it's going to log that it was done 30 seconds ago. So I can roll back or roll forward based on how this is working. I'm going at this point to slide the screen around. So you can see NAT network, you can see this, and you can see this. And I'm going to click on the desktop behind it. outside the windows and take a screenshot. And I'm going to save this screenshot as a JPEG, and I'll call this 3-net network on Debian. Any questions?
Not yet.
Okay. So at this point, what I want to do is I want to show exactly what happened when I took that third snapshot. If I go into my folder for the virtual machine and into Debian, and I take a look at the snapshot folder now, it went from 383 to 700 something, 780. Now it's 1.49 gigabytes. Again, I still don't have a 2 gig space because I haven't stored 2 gigabytes on the temporary disk. But if I downloaded something that was a gigabyte large into that disk and then took another snapshot, you would see this snapshot increase by an entire gigabyte because I've stored more on the transfer disk, which is temporarily attached. But I want to be able to roll forward or roll back depending on how this works. And it's going to catch all of these different changes. So once again, 383 to 780, I think, to 1.49 gigabytes. And I haven't really included any large disk files along the way, just system changes. This is why keeping an eye on host disk space is very important. You see I have 45.3 gigabytes of free space left. If I keep taking up a gig, 2 gigs, 3 gigs, 5 gigs, 10 gigs, it's not long before I run out of disk space and my host crashes. So the last step that I'm going to take, I'm going to power off my Debian. But I'm going to roll back the system state to the place before where we didn't have the network change. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out of here. And I'm going to close my Mozilla window. And how cool is that? We actually have a working web browser and Office software and everything running here on a virtual machine. So I'm going to go ahead and power this down. I'll shut it down. I'm going to leave my server running because I want this to stay on 3.4. But I want to take this and I want to roll from NAT network back to transfer. Okay? So I'm going to choose transfer. And I'm going to click restore. You're about to restore snapshot transfer. You can create a snapshot of the current state of the virtual machine first by checking the box below. Well, I know I already created a snapshot so it's telling you, hey, you can create another snapshot. So if you roll back, you can, you find out, oh no, that's not what I wanted. You can roll back to where you were. It's going to, by default, it's going to leave this checked. Now we created a separate snapshot called NAT network for that very purpose. So I'm going to uncheck that box, but I'm going to click restore. Do you wish to proceed? If you do not do this, the current state will be permanently lost. I'm going to say restore. That was pretty quick, wasn't it?
Very.
I want you to notice that instead of showing NAT network right here, it shows transfer, so I know which snapshot I'm using. Okay? I'm going to go back to details.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to start. And what should we be able to predict about our ability to ping the server?
That it should, I forgot. They should see the same, I don't remember.
Hostname dash capital I. Oh,
Yes, that. I was trying to figure that out.
so should I be able to ping the server at this point? I can't ping the server. But I rolled back to transfer, or yeah, I rolled back to transfer, which was the image that had to do with setting up the transfer disk before I made the network change. So what I'm going to do is click on this and press Control C. You see that I don't have network connectivity. So what I'm going to do now is see if I can show all three of these. I think I'm going to do this. Slide this over here. Slide that over there. I'm going to highlight my IP address. I'm going to take a screenshot now. And this one I'm going to call number 4. Roll back to transfer. Can I use a snapshot while a machine is running? Well, that's an interesting question. Let's find out. Can I roll back or roll forward? You see it's grayed out. My restore option to NAT network is grayed out. So the answer is I can't. In order to apply a snapshot, I have to shut the machine down. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'm going to shut down. And now I'm going to roll forward. I'm going to restore to NAT network. I don't want to create another snapshot. I already have a snapshot that includes transfer. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to hit restore. Bam. Now I'm going to start my machine. What should we be able to predict about our network connectivity at this point?
That it should work now.
It should work now. See, it's restoring, and you can even see the screen image that used to be there before. How cool is that? The correct We in the previous image, look, it even shows the terminal. It even shows the terminal from where I was. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to see what my IP address is. Oh, even the command, even the commands I issued that were cached in this system. I've got a 10.0.3.6 address now. I should be able to ping the server now. I can ping the server now. I'm going to press Control-C so that I've got the IP address highlighted. It's showing a successful ping. I'm going to put my server image back in there. So now I have it showing NAT network. I have the server showing here. This is the last image I'm catching, right? So I'm going to click on the desktop. I'm going to hit print screen. I'll bring up Paint. I'll paste it in here. I'll save as. This is my 5th point. This is for 5 points, right? I'm going to say roll forward. Roll forward to NAT network. Well, if I say roll forward, I guess it means again. I like that much better. Roll forward to NAT network enabled state. I could say return to NAT network enabled state. You get the point.
Yeah.
I'll do that. It's a little bit more efficient. Return to NAT network enabled state. That's number 5. I'm going to open up a Word document. I'm going to paste 1 in, hit enter, paste 2 in, hit enter, paste 3 in, hit enter. Every time I hit enter, I'm putting a blank space in between the images. So I'll hit save. At this point, if I open up Word, I'll do a new document. I'll call this, I'll save it as custom. Custom Solutions tKentop. I'll insert a picture from this device. I'm going to first one, click to the right, hit enter, insert this device. Number 2, whoop. Oh, I'm in the wrong directory. Hold on. My bad. Insert a picture from this device, and it's not images, it's screen images. There we go. Original. Hit enter. You follow what I'm doing, right?
Yep.
Okay. There's 2. I click to the right. I hit enter. There's insert 3. I hit enter. I'm inserting 4. Click to the right, hit enter. If I hit enter while it's highlighted, it might delete the picture. I'm gonna insert picture from this device 5. And now I can save it and I can submit it and I'm done. And I get full credit for my solution. Do you have any questions at this point?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I think I got it.
All righty. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and enjoy the rest of the week. And good luck with your assessment retakes and your final.
All right, thank you.